Allison at my safe place here. Hope everybody's having a good day. First, I want to make sure that people are on the right video for the right reasons. I'm going to be talking about my cancer experience and what happened for me. And this is a very personal story. And it's about how cancer gave me the courage to get away from a toxic relationship. And so this is not for everybody. It's certainly not for every person going through this horrifying disease, dealing with it. It's definitely not for the parents or loved ones with children who are suffering at the moment with cancer. So, and I want you to know that if you start to feel triggered or this is really not going anyplace, the best thing for you to do would probably be to stop watching immediately, because it can be hard to listen to this stuff, even if you are the person who's trying to work through this illness and what it means for you. And I want you to know that my thoughts and prayers are always with those people who are currently suffering, for the family and friends of those who have passed on because of this dreadful disease. So I'm in no way making light of it or claiming that this is the answer for everybody. I can only speak from my own experience, which was back in 1999, I was diagnosed on my 32nd birthday with a fairly rare cancer that is also incurable. And so I'm about to celebrate, tomorrow actually is the 17th anniversary of being healthy, in remission, cancer-free. And I'm also doing a lot of exploring of the toxic relationships that I've lived with and lived through, and how those are kind of interconnected for me and people like me. So you can see that this might not be the video for you if you're looking for answers in terms of working through cancer. So back when I was diagnosed, and it took a couple of years to diagnose this because it's rare enough and unusual enough that doctors are certainly not looking for it. And it's called adenoid cystic carcinoma. And I know I have a crappy camera right now, so you probably can't see, but on the left side of my neck here, there's a big mottled scar from the radiation. It's actually not from the surgery that I also had. This crazy diagnosis, when it finally came with my head and neck surgeon, we finally figured out what it was. And originally they thought it was a blocked salivary duct. And after some testing, we discovered this cancer, and how little was known about it at the time. And I think that they've improved their understanding and knowledge of it in the last 17 years. But I was told that it was fairly rare and that it was incurable. So that's how I began this journey of separating from toxic relationships and learning what was going on with me and for me in my body, and what my body was actually doing for me and telling me with this terrible disease. At the time, I was married to my first husband and the father of my 2 children, and he was supportive through the treatment. We ended up going to the U.S. for treatment and paying for it out of pocket, because happened to have a lot of family members who are in academia and doctors and some lawyers in both sides of the family. So I was able to access a lot of research on this rare tumor, and it just so happened that there was specialized treatment with an oncologist who specialized in this rare disease in the U.S., and that we were able to access. I did have to travel, but it wasn't horrendous. And after the horror of the treatment, which actually turned out to be quite a bit worse than the actual disease itself, certainly at the point where I was diagnosed, which was only at about stage 2, stage 3. And there were some issues around the original doctor who had blown me off, and we decided not to pursue legal action because I really wanted to just focus on healing. I had a 5-year-old son and a 4-year-old daughter, and we were far away from both of our families of origin, so the real focus for me became healing. And little did I know that it was going to include way more than just the radiation treatment I received, and I integrated a lot of things like nutritional supplements. I was following the advice of a certified nutritional consultant, which is someone who has a PhD and whose specialization happened to be cancer, who was also based in the US and happened to be the sister of a very good friend of mine. So I was very lucky in a lot of aspects of this very unfortunate situation. And I have to tell you that this particular cancer has no known etiology. It doesn't come from smoking or drinking, neither of which I did. I was a dancer, a ballet dancer at the time, so I was in really amazing physical shape, just getting through my advanced 1 Cicchetti ballet exam. So just to tell you the level I was at, the physical fitness I was at, the health that I had in other areas of my body. So it kind of made this cancer not make sense in a lot of ways. And I did a lot of reading and a lot of research and a lot of integrative work. So I did some meditation and some hypnosis and tried to gather in as much as I possibly could to get a grip on it. And at one point I was taking upwards of 40 different supplements a day, depending on where I was in my treatment. And to be honest, they had never seen anyone do it quite as well as I had, because I was integrating all of these things, as well as this amazing neutron beam radiation that I received, which is incredibly powerful. And because it's incredibly powerful, it also has incredibly powerful side effects. So, and I've been living with those ever since, but amen, I'll take it. No problem. So what I discovered in this whole journey that I found almost as important, if not more so, than the physical treatments was the emotional work that had to be done around this. And after my treatment was over and my body had started to recover and life started to return somewhat to normal, something really interesting happened to me. I became really, really zen and very, very peaceful and incredibly grateful just to be alive. I had a very uncertain prognosis. No one knew how long I was going to live. No one could sort of say, well, there's an average. Now we can sort of see where people fall in this. And I'm about 2 years ahead of the curve in terms of the research, and the research is showing it about 60% of patients die from this cancer by year 15, because it is the type of cancer that can come back after long periods of remission, so 10, 15, 20, even 25 years. So I'm not sure that I'm ever going to be out of the woods, and that has affected how I see and saw my life. And what it did for me at that time, during that Zen period where I was just grateful to be alive and grateful for everything, was I started to pick up on patterns of my own behavior and acknowledge where I was making unconscious choices, let's say, how I was continuing to engage in the toxicity of my marriage. And so after the initial shock and the treatment, as I began to change, I found that my husband at the time actually tried to put me back in the box I had been in before the treatment. And what that meant was he kept bringing up past events talking about my past behavior as though it were happening still. And no matter what I said to say that's not who I am anymore, he would insist on bringing it up, especially things like me having a bad temper. And I am half Italian, so I can be pretty passionate. But one of the things that really alerted me to this kind of toxicity is that he absolutely refused to accept this new me and this new way of being that I really felt like I needed to keep going, to survive, to be there for my children. I couldn't imagine leaving my kids behind. And that's why I pursued this relentlessly. And after 3 years, we were separated and divorced because I simply could not be that person that he had married. He did not like the changes in me. And over the years, the divorce was very acrimonious. There was a lot of attacking. There was a lot of name calling. There was a lot of going to court over things. And I found it very, very distressing. I found it difficult, and I would often sort of let a lot of things go just to hopefully shut him up. Nothing worked. In the interim, I met and married the love of my life, who was an amazing, loving, generous, giving person that I'm incredibly lucky to have in my life, and my kids love him to death. He's an amazing step-parent. So I've been very lucky in some regards, and through those years, it took a long time to come to the conclusion that I had actually been married to a covert narcissist. And that my illness, this cancer, this horrifying, rare, incurable cancer, was I'm about to swear, but it was my fucking wake-up call. It was the biggest wake-up call ever, and it wakes me up every single day because it's incurable, because I never get the 5 years and you're all cured, because no one's ever heard of it, because doctors look at me like this when I tell them what I've had. I know that if I don't continue to dig deep and find solutions and work through old patterns, that there's every possibility I could get sick again. And I've looked at the work of the amazing Dr. Gabor Mate, who has talked about in his book, When the Body Says No, and you can look him up on YouTube, and he talks about the same things. And I was actually, through this exploration, able to discover that this is a long-term, multi-generational pattern that comes out in different ways in different members of the family, on both sides of the family, of both my ex-husband's and mine. My codependency, I never would have recognized that without cancer. How I've played into repeating a pattern even with my own children, and where I looked for it in my own family of origin, discovered that I have a covert narcissistic mother, and a codependent and enabling father who passed away 13 years ago. So he's kind of not affecting me as deeply as my mother was throughout this. And it was only through cancer and because of cancer that I was able to find the courage to do this deep, deep work. I think I would have continued in complete and utter denial and repression. And when I say denial, I'm not talking about me just saying, no, that never happened. I'm talking about subconscious repression. I'm talking about things that happened that I just couldn't access. So it was really the cancer and doing the work around healing physically, mentally, emotionally, and spiritually that allowed me to get to the place that I am today, which is still, I've got a long way to go. I've got a lot of work, more things evolved. But on this 17th anniversary, I just wanted to say that there is a light at the end of this tunnel, that things can get better, that this doesn't apply to everyone, that you might do all the right things, you might do an integrated approach, you might just follow your doctor's advice, You might have been a healthy person like I was before it happened, and still not be able to heal physically. And this is not a commentary on that. This is a commentary on what my experience was and how I want to continue to keep doing that exploration work, and how it's led me to understand that I can trust my body. While being raised by a narcissistic mother who taught me and trained me to mistrust my own feelings and to dismiss my own emotions and even my own intuition, that my body has always been there. My body reacts. I feel things in my body. And the biggest one, and I've always been that type of person, since childhood, if something was upsetting me, you wouldn't necessarily see it in my face or hear it in my words, but sure as anything, I would get sick. So I listened to that. I paid attention to my body. And the more I pay attention to my body, the more I find that my feelings, my emotions, and even my intuition are coming back online. I'm beginning to build a trust with them. And it started somatically. It started within my body. So I'm really trusting that. I'm really going with that, and I'm celebrating my body's ability to scream at me in no uncertain terms that it was time to wake the fuck up. So I hope that helps. Please leave any comments you like in the boxes below, and hopefully I can continue sharing a little bit of my story, and that it might be helpful to someone else out there in some small way. Have a great day.